exciting day here in editing for the web. We have reached the halfway point of the course. Woohoo! If you are still here, still with us, and still listening to these archives, that means that you have made it through that really sort of torturous assignment schedule we had last week thanks to the Thanksgiving holiday. So I just wanted to congratulate all of you guys and give you a pat on the back for your perseverance through having so many deliverables due one after the other. The reason why we had to push forward at the pace that we did was because we have benchmarks that we need to meet in order to move through the material and make sure that you guys are getting experience with all the different objectives that we have planned for the course. So high five to you guys collectively. Another reason to celebrate today is that you guys turned in your Real Deal Taco sites over the weekend. So what we're going to do here in class today is we are going to take a look at those and offer some positive, productive feedback about how to move forward into the week 4 revision of this project. So here's a nice question that I like to ask the students who are with me in the classroom. I've got 2 of them here. How did it go? How did it go for you guys? Tell us about your experience.
So it has its bumps in the road.
Okay, so
things like, for instance, the Twitter. At least for me, it needed permission from the owner to embed it.
okay.
So I did a hyperlink and I typed in Twitter and I put the logo underneath it, so it looked like it was embedded.
Okay, so you're running into some issues with using sort of the inherent configuration tools within the content management system, but it sounds like you found a workaround. Okay, very good.
And also, I had a hard time putting the photos next to the words and stuff because I was like, oh, I don't need to link there because then you couldn't tell what photo would go with what. So I decided to use the photos that were given to me and put them as a header for each page you're on. So whatever page you're on, you're going to see your product.
Okay, so you took some artistic liberties with the placement of photos because you found it difficult to lay them out in just sort of the menu. Is that what you're talking about? Okay, okay.
So those
the few main things. Okay, what else?
The pet coding.
Yeah.
It said site cannot be found. So I did not end up that link.
Okay, so there's an issue with that link. All right, we'll have to go back and take a look at that one for sure. How'd it go for you, Kayla?
It was cool. I like having to select every layout page. I had a bit of technical difficulties, like I said, with the social media.
Okay.
I had to insert the icons and the links, but I figured it out. There was a button where I could embed it. Other than that, trying mostly the design and the look of it, I wasn't sure how to change the colors in the background, stuff like that, or the fonts, which I figured out this morning. So hopefully I can modify that.
Okay, cool. So, it sounds like you guys had some similar challenges, both with, not having, let's say, all of the administrative login credentials that you needed for the social media accounts to be able to use the built-in connection tools in Wix and Squarespace, respectively. It sounds like you both found a workaround for that issue, just to kind of, if only to mock up the functionality of what it might look like, which is entirely, a good thing to do in this case. I'm glad that you were able to think through the problem enough to know, another way to approach it or another way to solve it for sure. As we move through this review, I'll definitely give you guys some feedback on what it is that you put together and some ideas for moving the site to its next best place in week 4. So the way that I approach this, you guys, is that I've loaded up all of your sites in a new browser window. And all of the sites that were submitted by the online students. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go through each one of them one by one, page by page, and point out areas of opportunity for revising and making these sites stronger with ultimately the goal of, getting this site to a point where you can use it as a portfolio piece to demonstrate skills and best practices in website strategy and design, right? So what I'm looking for here today are disconnects in my user experience, right? I'm looking for things that make me go, right? Really good design is not noticed because I just can continue on my mission, right? But it's the things that give me a hang up that are kind of like the initial spots to take a look at. Okay, how could we approach this a little bit differently so that I don't get hung up here at this point, but instead move, without a hitch or without an obstacle to whatever, piece of information I was looking for, whatever mission I was on as a user. I don't know if you guys are old enough. I mean, I feel like maybe now it's like a retro thing, but like, music from the 90s. There's a song called Things That Make You Go, by CNC Music Factory. Anybody? No? Huh? No? If you hear it, maybe. Maybe we'll preview it. This is a screenshot from the video, which is actually kind of a cool video. Google it, Things That Make You Go, But CNC Music Factory was like a big, big artist in the 90s because they had a lot of like dance hits. They were the band that put together Everybody Dance Now. Yes, right? So I pulled up a screenshot of this video because, again, I'm just looking for the things that make me go, It's a cause for pause. It's a hang up in my user experience. Again, I know that you guys, for many of you, this might have been your first attempt at putting together a full site for somebody other than yourself, other than a portfolio. And again, my feedback here is meant to move this to its next best place. I'm going to be picky. I'm going to point out all of the things that I see. I will spend some time, the first time we come across a concept or a technique that needs explaining, I'll spend a little bit more time discussing it on the front end. But let's say we see that in the next 3 sites as well. I'm not going to explain that thing over and over again, right? So you guys here in class have the benefit of hearing and seeing the review of all of these sites. And so what I'm asking of the online students as well is not just to watch the part of this recording that's dedicated to your site, but all of the sites, because there's so much that we can learn from how each one of us approached this exact same design opportunity, right? And just because you didn't make this mistake or, you overlooked this particular area, it doesn't mean you did it on purpose, right? Maybe it just means that you didn't have the opportunity to do that. So again, the things that we're talking about today are some high-level concepts and techniques that you then need to be able to extrapolate and put into the build of your portfolio site coming up this week. Does that make sense how that works? So we're learning things about Real Deal Tacos that I expect for you guys to be applying the concept or technique into your portfolio site. All right, so let's go ahead. Actually, really quick. I'm not sure if you guys have taken a look at that week 4 revision project yet, but what I ask you to do is show me some before and after screenshots of your site. Now, many of you, once you hear the feedback on your site today, are going to feel like you want to rush to make some changes, which is great. I love that you'll carry that motivation to propel you into the revision process, but a lot of times you guys start that and don't know that you need the before shots. So I want to give you the quick heads up, ask you guys to go over to your sites, and then of course if all else fails and you haven't done that by the time you've made changes to your site, please know that this this recording is capturing the current state of your site as is, and you can if need be, come back to this recording and screenshot your site from here. All right, so let's exit the presentation and head on over to where I have your sites queued up in a browser window. All right, so here we are. We're going to start with this first Real Deal Taco site. It looks like this one was built on Google Sites. And so I don't get to see a lot of this here in the class. Most people are choosing Wix and Weebly, Squarespace and WordPress, but Google Sites is really robust and they've come a long way, and I'm excited to see Real Deal Tacos. This might actually even be the first Real Deal Tacos that was built on Google Sites. So I'm excited to see what's possible here. So first things first is a very simple layout. Which is nice, it's clean, but the branding information really gets lost up here in the corner, right? You can barely see that logo. It's absolutely tiny and you can't read the words, which makes it basically unusable in its current layout and design. My recommendation here would be to have the name Real Deal Tacos just in this area the way it is, and then bring the logo down here in this banner area, right? Because as is, Real Deal Tacos up here and then Real Deal Tacos in the banner in this exact same way is a bit redundant, right? So it's fine to, just have the name up at the top, but have that logo and the clear branding information front and center in that area above the fold. Again, that means the area before you start to have to scroll, just to give a nice, strong visual impact so people know right away that they're in the right place. So looking at the information that is available to me above the fold, I have branding information that needs to be bigger. I've got a nice, strong header here, but kind of the window itself, it doesn't really show much but kind of like a bunch of corn chips, right? You can kind of see that there's some food back there, but it seems like maybe the focal point of this image needs to be adjusted, or maybe the image needs to be cropped in such a way to make this image make more sense in this space, right? You're trying to highlight something about the food by putting it here, but it doesn't translate that well with the current cropping. I like that there is kind of an opaque, shadow over the top of the image. You can play with the transparency of that to bring it, like more transparent or less transparent. But again, the goal would be that it is solid enough that you can read the words on top of it. And you do a really nice job of that here, right? You can clearly read the words on top of this image. So in terms of navigation, we've got home, news, about, menu, and contact us. And then we've got some testimonials here on the home page, and then that fictitious business statement that we need, right? So a couple of things that this designer is not necessarily making the most of this high value real estate area. This home page, which is the only page that we can really guarantee that someone is going to see of the site. You're not really using this space here to highlight a feature of the day, a menu item, or one of the most important bits of content on this site, which would be the locations. I don't see anywhere on this snapshot that gives me any idea about where this truck is located, right? I can maybe think that it's under contact us, but there's nothing specifically from this snapshot where I can make any sort of real conclusion about that, right? Additionally, there's all this white space. It could use a little bit more imagery here, something that's a bit more enticing in terms of the food and the highlighting of that as a main feature. Now, the testimonials are a great inclusion, but there's some different thought processes with when and where and why to include testimonials. Now, as a business, it's always great to share, the recommendations or the good words of a satisfied customer. But when you put them on a business website, they're curated. And by curated, I mean cherry-picked. A business owner is only ever going to choose to put the really great testimonials. You'll never find that one-star review that the owner has decided to put up there. When you want something that's a bit more objective, meaning that it's not cherry-picked, where do you go for that? Yelp, Google reviews, right? So there are other places where you can go to see something that's a bit more well-rounded in terms of a review. So because we know that the testimonials on a business website that are not put there by Yelp or Google reviews have been curated, we know that they're all going to be good. We know that they're all going to basically say the same thing, which is you should eat here, right? And because we know that all of these say you should eat here in some form, shape, or combination of words, I'm less likely to read all of them because I'm not going to get a different message as I've moved down. They all say the same thing, which is you should eat here. So because of that, if you want to get these in front of people's eyes and perhaps give them a bit more focal attention, consider giving them like a visual element, right? consider giving them, you've already given like a little bit of a different look in terms of the design, right? You've made it bold and you've italicized it to make it, kind of look like a spoken word here. But what if, you put them in a colored conversation bubble? What if you gave me a thumbnail of what this guy Geo, the student, looks like? You're giving me more visual content to look at. And instead of putting them all together, why not pepper them throughout the site? Meaning that you put one on this page, one on the next page, one on another page. In that way, you might get people to, pause for just a second longer to read what's being said there, because it is acting not just as words or message, but it's a visual element as well. So there's an opportunity there. So I'm going to go through to these next few pages. So here we see news. And as I'm scrolling down, what this looks like to me is, so I'm going to just, this is not a link, but this is a link. And when I'm hovering over it, I can see that it's going to take me to the specific page that's highlighting this particular event. I think that that's where that's going. Okay, yeah, the underwater robot competition, which is cool, so it's more information there. But anytime you have news or something that's functioning more like a blog, it should be put out there on a blogging type page. And the reason for that is because this content is time-stamped, meaning that it's dated. It has relevancy at a certain point in time and less relevancy after that date has passed. With a blog, anytime you have new content, it basically replaces the last thing that you put up there. And when I say replace, I just mean move it further down on the list of pages or articles that are there. This is beneficial for a couple of reasons. The first is that as far as workflow, as the potential business owner who's also trying to manage a website, I don't have to go in here and reformat this whole page to add a new article. I just would go to the area where it says make a new post, and then it moves everything else down versus having to manually do it and then maybe remove one of the articles because the page has gotten too long, right? All of that is automated with a blogging type interface or module. And most of the content management systems like Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, you can choose, like, do I want this to be a plain text page? Do I want it to be a gallery page? Do I want it to be a blog page or an index page? I'm not sure how it is on Google sites, and so that's something that you're going to need to take a look at to see if there is that functionality or capability. But the other reason why blogs are awesome, you guys, is because it retains very keyword-rich content and is historically indexed with your site, right? So when, let's say, the owner of Real Deal Tacos posts a new post here, right? It kicks off, let's say, it removes this fresh summer recipes one off the page because that goes into an archive. It's not deleted. It doesn't disappear forever. It's just put into an archived space whereby search engines like Google and Bing can still locate this page, right? Even if it's not incredibly visible to the viewer, that keyword-rich content is still there and can be associated with Real Deal Tacos. So if someone is searching for that combination of terms, they'll still be able to find this site. Even if it's not timely in terms of the fact that May 7th was a long time ago, but if someone were to search out Real Deal Taco and fresh art, they would still get to the site, which is the important thing. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing I'd like to see here again is, and this is a similar point of feedback from the homepage, is the inclusion of more photos and more visual elements. As I'm looking at the information here, what I see is that it's basically been pulled from the document that was provided and put straight into this in basically the exact same format, right? No attention was paid to breaking up this text, to streamlining it, to give it a more of a visual element. It's all basically just paragraph text on a page, which, as we've learned throughout the month, is not the best way to present information to viewers or visitors to a site, because they're very quickly trying to scan the information for the details that are most pertinent to them. And so how do we break up this text? How do we leverage headings, subheadings, and bulleted lists? How do we add images to make this information, we're laying it out in a way that facilitates the mission of that user, right? So, care needs to be taken here with each one of these posts to, lay it out in such a way to break up that text. Another thing is I do see some discrepancy here between the line spacing, right? So why does this go almost like it's double spaced and here it's single spaced, right? So these are small things, but again, I told you that my eye is trained to see these inconsistencies and to like wave a flag over them so you'll know how to address these things in the revision of this project moving forward. Jumping over to the About page, we have a really nice shortened version of that long About story. So this is an area where you've gone in and you've basically streamlined it down to the most salient parts. But in doing that, what I'll say is that you've basically made this just, you know, a very short and sweet introduction to them and to their story. I don't know that this needs its own page at this point. There's barely any content here. This might be something that would be better suited now for the home page, just as, you know, a little brief introduction of who they are and what they do. Menu. So here we have all of these areas have been laid out. I appreciate the subheadings here that you've got going on. So this information is very easily scannable. One thing that you've done is that you've laid them all out in a long scrolling list, which is great. The headings and subheadings make it easy for me to jump from section to section. But you do have a lot of unused space here, unused space that could be filled with imagery. Or what about laying this out not so much as a list, but as a grid, so that we have menu item, menu item, menu item, as opposed to having them stacked, having them side by side in that way. It's an alternative idea for laying it out just to make more use of the available space that we see here, and to not have to scroll as much between sections. Last but not least, I'm going to jump over to the Contact Us page, and so we've got the phone number and then the hours of operation here. And then we've got the social media down here at the bottom. So we'll take a look at each of these elements. I appreciate the simplicity of this page, but think that a map might be nice to see here, something that either mocks up where the truck is right now, or maybe just one that shows a pin drop of all of these locations to show the relative proximity or the route that the truck is going on. Again, you're putting all of the content in a list, which it basically just pushes all of this other content further down on the page. What if, again, you had like little columns here that said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it stretched across the page instead of having all of this empty space? Or alternatively, maybe there's a map that goes here. There's a couple of ways to approach that. Under social media here, it looks like you have set up these ways that we can link out. There's, we talked a little bit kind of in the introduction of this feedback section about not having to log in information to the social media accounts to be able to use in-platform, connections. So this is, I think it is a very acceptable way of doing this, but there's some like redundancy here of like the logo. And especially when we have very recognizable iconography associated with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Why not pull those icons in and then just link that image itself to the URLs that were provided to you from your client, if that makes sense. Additionally, I think the social media would be something that we'd want to kind of promote in a larger way, just not at the bottom of this Contact Us page. It almost seems like an afterthought here. I mean, it seems like it would be something cool to include up here in the header or the footer of the site, which would allow it to be visible on every single page at that point, because those are two static environments, right? So what this site has going for it is that it's so clean and it's very functional, right? And so really there's an opportunity here to enhance the visuals of this and in some of the layout of the text content, moving not just from listing, but maybe grid type layout moving forward into that week 4 revision. So we're moving next over to the Real Deal Tacos site. So spoiler alert, we've got 6 sites and they are all Real Deal Tacos. So we're on 2 of 6 and here we go. So this one is a Squarespace site. So you can see, very immediately just a different approach in terms of the visual. We do have that small logo up here in the corner, so we're running into the same issue as we did on the last site where the branding information is minuscule. It does not scale well in this particular application. Now what's happening here, you guys, is that on a lot of these templates, this header area is defined to have a certain height, right? And so then when you put your logo in there, it defaults that logo to the height of that header area. Now, many times in the settings, you can go in and say, I want the header to be, instead of 30 pixels high, I want it to be 100 pixels. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to give you, your logo is going to be taller in that. But this square logo is not going to represent well in this horizontal shape up here, right? Like you really need a landscape orientation or a horizontal orientation for the logo for it to look right. So the workaround would be to maybe just with text write out Real Deal Tacos up here, and again use this area for a really large, striking and readable version of that logo, right? Just again, because this is my job and what I do as far as finding the details, this would be Real, R-E-E-L, Deal Tacos. And then looking at the information here in the navigation, we've got home, menu, about, locations, and contact. I'm scrolling down a little bit. I do see that fictitious statement in disclaimer at the bottom, which is important and great. And this is how this designer approached the social media connectivity issues, is basically made buttons that then link out to those URLs that were provided, which is a perfectly acceptable way to do that, given that you cannot connect them within the app here, because you don't have the login information. But again, so the advice that I gave the last designer, which was you could bring in iconography, meaning the Facebook logo, the Instagram logo, the Twitter logo, and link that image. That would be another workaround here if you wanted something that was more visual in that aspect. So just kind of stylistically, the first thing that I see here is a really large banner image, which is great. It shows more of the taco, which was one of the issues for that kind of shorter banner image in the other site. But the overlay is so dark. It's really hard to see it. Real Deal Tacos is ocean inspired and, balmy breezes, and it gives kind of like a light and airy sort of feel to it, but this side is very dark. And so in that way, the aesthetic of it doesn't really match the overall vibe or brand of Real Deal Tacos. It's very clean. I like the reliance on a strong image here, but it's not quite right in terms of the darkness. That doesn't support the existing brand. Now the other thing is, again, your homepage is your high value real estate. It is the only area that you know that visitors will be able to see. And so here I would say that, you're not really sharing a lot of content, right? There's nothing here. There's no call to action. There's no highlighting a location, a recipe, a deal of the day, their favorite taco, no bit of the backstory. And so really a lot of opportunity here to build this page up in such a way that makes people want to visit the other pages, right? I know that a lot of you guys, and I see this a lot with your portfolio website. So again, here's a great area where you can extrapolate something that we're talking about to your portfolio sites. When you are building those portfolio sites, many times I see students have absolutely no idea what to put on a home page because they have put, what they consider to be the introductory information about them on an about page. And so between the two pages, there's barely any information at all because they've scattered it a little bit between home and about. If the site is your portfolio site, then it stands to reason that the home page would have some about information on you, right? So don't feel the need to create multiple pages with just tiny droplets of content. Feel free if you need to consolidate that content into one page. And it's okay that on your portfolio site you don't have just a straight up about me page because you have then put that content on the home page. That's a perfectly appropriate place for it. And that's something that we saw here on this last Real Deal Tacos site. On this here, this is not really enough information to really warrant its own page. It would work better to include that information here on the home page. So in the same way, when you're working on your portfolio sites, if you're finding like a lack of content for a page, feel free to find a relevant alternative place for that instead of kind of, creating a space for it, that you don't have enough content to fill. All right, so jumping back over to this Real Deal Taco site, I'm going to jump next to menu.
Actually, the difference there is that the home page,
Mm-hmm.
if you press the logo, it goes to that first page, but then there's like the home page as well. So I think that was the confusion. I should have really made it the home page.
Okay, so there is some confusion. There is some confusion because the page that I land on, I think, is the home page. But in this case, you've created it maybe more like a splash page of some kind or a welcome page. So that's definitely a disconnect and not intuitive. I did not know that this was a separate page from home. And so here we see the events. We see kind of like a slideshow of imagery here, which is great. I'm clicking on this and it's kind of advancing this area and I can see the different food. An opportunity here would be that metadata that we're talking about, title, description, right? I want to know, like, is this the salsa fresca, or is this the, is this the blackened fish taco, or is that the, pulled pork? I don't know, but I know that's the one I want to order. So you can give me a little bit of information that will help me make more sense of what I'm looking at. So here we see the events. Now, this designer has taken kind of a different approach, and instead of including all of that text information that was provided in the original post, really streamlining it down and kind of highlighting, like if this was the home page, I could kind of see this being like, highlighting the event, and then maybe I could click on that to a page that took me to a little bit more information about this. Because I do see, here we go, Real Deal Taco and Fresh Art. This is the date and this is the venue. But like, I might have more questions about that need to be answered. But I like the idea of promoting it on the home page in that way because it is timely, it is intriguing, it is of interest, it is a reason to come out to the old historic Decatur Street on May 7th to see them, right? So talking about what could be possible for the homepage, this is a great start, like the image gallery, promoting an event, but also maybe a featured menu item, or maybe one testimonial. How about your social media stuff? How about just a little bit of the backstory on the truck? There's a lot of things that you could pull from. I want you to think about this homepage as it's not a catch-all, meaning you have to put everything out there, but what if it's like a taste tester? Like maybe it's like you're just giving me a taste of all of the content that I see on the other pages. So jumping next over to menu. So here we have just some large images, and I'm scrolling down and I see a few different options on the menu. So I like the way that you're leveraging this in the columns and that you're using these headings and subheadings. What I'll say here is there's a little bit of, so this one doesn't have a bullet. The bullets are kind of weird because the descriptions kind of start, the descriptions start kind of far left of that. The font that you have here too, I like it, but I haven't seen it. Let me just go back to the home page really quick. I haven't seen it yet in other areas, so I don't know. It just seems like stylistically a little bit different at this point, so I'm not really sure about the consistency. Like there's some different visual stylings going on there. I'd love to see the inclusion of more pictures, right? You've broken this up in a great way to have the subsections. And I'm not sure if it's possible within the design, but also, the black and white is very clean and offers a lot of contrast, but again, the color scheme is somewhat off for the restaurant and the overall brand. So jumping next to the About page, so here we have a really big picture of a couple, right? So this is an absolutely huge picture. So that's going to need to be scaled down a little bit because the story part of it down here gets pushed, right? And you've done a nice job of, I don't really see much of an about story. And that's okay to streamline it, but you've called this an about page, right? So it stands to reason that it would be more, sort of an about information. I appreciate the kind of the visual, the stylistic, you know, effect that this has. That looks like maybe the Limes picture below it. And again, kind of like a different typeface or a different font. So I just want you to kind of explore some consistencies with a theme there. And then the opacity of this layer on top is super dark. I only know that's the Lime picture because I look at this stuff all the time, right? It just kind of makes it too hard to see. With this here, it's the alignment and the layout of this seems a bit funny, the way that this one line extends all the way over here, and there's just like so much space in between. Like, my recommendation is to not let it go full screen, meaning that your content more sits in an area maybe a bit like this, or maybe even smaller, but give more padding on the side there. I'd probably bring this image over here, maybe to about this area, and then flank that text over here to the side of it. Just because you have a nice visual boundary or a visual alignment right here where these words wrap, and that line would look nice with the, you know, the other edge of this image. Jumping next to the locations page, so here we have just a nice map up here at the top, the hours of operation. The scale, like the way that you have applied your headings here, look a little off, right? Because the date information is the hierarchy of information, it needs to be reversed, whereby this needs to be bigger, or I'm sorry, the day needs to be bigger. It's also a little bit confusing because they're different lunch and dinner spots. So it says they're here Monday through Thursday and they're here Monday through Thursday, but how can they be at both places at the same time? Right? So there's an accuracy thing that needs to go on here to make it a bit more understandable. The map is good. You just basically put in San Diego in general here. What might be nice, and I know that you're leveraging the in-platform Squarespace map, and you probably just put in San Diego, and this is what it generated for you. You know, you could put in one of these, you know, particular addresses if you would like, and say this is where we are right now.
The one I put in was San Diego State University.
Okay, San Diego State University. But when you put one location and you don't give the extra context to understand the content, this might lead me to believe, because there's nothing here that says San Diego State University highlighting anything particular about it. It looks like a pin drop and a general sort of collegiate area, because you can see it says college, you know, west or east. But what's going on here is that, like, if I didn't know that you're trying to tell me where the truck was at the given moment, I might just think that this is where, you know, the office is, or where the truck gets parked every night, or maybe this is the kitchen where things get made. You are kind of inferring maybe that there is a physical, like a single physical location for this site, which is not what you're doing. So in order to make sure that that's not what I assume about this, you need to put, this is where we're located right now, right? Just make it clear. You know, overall, like, Squarespace forces you into good design because they, more so than Wix, limit your ability to just willy-nilly change styles or move things around. And so there's an elegance or a sleekness to it. But even so, there are still some opportunities here, you know, that we've identified for you to get this site a bit more on brand and to make a few tweaks to the pages, just to let that content, you know, let it work the way that it's intended to work here on the page. All right. Here we got another Real Deal Taco site. Here we see Real Deal Tacos front and center. We've got the social media up here in the top, but as I hover over it, I can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen that these icons are in fact linked to Wix accounts. So that's pretty, that's a standard default thing. You guys, as you are, using templates in the service of your designs and they have placeholder content, you always need to be sure that you're going in and you're swapping that content out or those links out for the stuff that is specific and particular to the client that you're serving. Because this is a disconnect. If I hit this and it takes me to the Wix Facebook page, which it does, like as a client, I'm like, I don't, why is that? Why am I going to Wix? Why am I not going to my own site? So it's like dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So make sure that you're doing that. Here we've got fast, friendly, organic, which is awesome. And here we have navigation, home menu, contests and winners, on the go locator, and reviews and contact us. We've got the tagline and some awesome photos here. So we've got them titled. I know that that's what the chips and salsa look like. This is what the fish taco looks like. This is what the blackened fish taco looks like. So you can see that this designer has taken care to label these and that we have the context to understand that if that's what I want to order, that's what I should call for it by name. Now, I certainly appreciate this designer going out and finding some additional imagery to use in this project, but I also want to caution you guys to make sure that if you're doing that on your client's behalf, that you're choosing images that represent their business. Now, in this particular shot that says ceviche, this isn't really necessarily ceviche. In this application. So there's a disconnect there. It's mislabeled in that respect. The other thing is that this is served on a plate, but this is a food truck, right? A food truck is serving things basically in paper boats with some tissue paper. So again, it's off brand or it's off aesthetic in that way. We've got our story. So here this designer has taken a really a streamlined approach to sharing that information, which is awesome. I might like to see a little bit here in terms of like an image or some added visuals down here at the bottom, but really pleased to see how this has been streamlined according to what you guys have been learning all month, which is that people don't read every word on a website. Basically 20% of the information on the page is taken in, and that we're attracted to visual content. So going next over to menu, here we have, it's broken up by the various sections, and some of the styles that were on the the pages that were provided to you have been brought over, which look nice. But as you can see here, this designer has taken care to make sure that this is selectable text. These are words that I can copy and paste and use in some other way if I want to, or they are certainly able to be found by search engines. That keyword-rich content. The way that this has been laid out in the Word or PDF document that was provided to you gives it in a kind of a list type form here, which has been mimicked on this site, and it looks very organized. And just to point out though that there is other available space. It looks like the information is a bit consolidated. It looks a bit crowded, especially just the spacing between these elements. Again, what's wonderful about websites as a medium for sharing content is that you can spread things out a little bit more. We're not worried that it's going to run to, let's say, 2 pages the way we would in a print document, because it doesn't cost us more to have to scroll a little bit more. So give those things room to breathe. And we talked about this with a few of the other reviews, but the idea of not just listing the information but leveraging grid layouts also. The addition of visual content here would also be nice. Jumping next to contest winners. So here it's a page that's basically, it looks like it's mocking up what this could look like. We don't see anything here on the home page that says anything about contests. Maybe that's something that they are a marketing strategy that they're conducting through social media accounts. But here it just looks a little bit unfinished. You're giving us an idea about what this could look like, but we don't have we don't see the follow through on it. So this would be a great place to continue pushing forward with making sure that we have all the context we need to understand this page in and of itself. It almost seems that this information would be something great for the home page, right? It seems like this could be something where you're like really giving some visibility to either your contest or the content that you're trying to get out there. So, definitely something to think about. The on-the-go locator, so on location. So here we're just seeing, basically a single pin drop here. I'm going to refresh the page just to make sure that there's not an additional functionality that I'm missing. It looks like this is just kind of a single image. So here again, it begs the question, is this where you are currently? Is this where the truck is right now? And how can we even really know where that is? Because it looks like it's just a picture of a map and not a functional widget or module of a map. So it's not like I can even click into this to get the information about the actual, cross streets or locations like that. Or is this the kitchen? Is this where the truck is parked? Is this the headquarters office? These are all sort of things that are left unsaid that need to be clarified, because when you have a business that moves around, your clients or your customers need to know where you are. So again, and also maybe this is where you are right now, but I don't want to know right now. I'm planning for my lunch later this week. I need to know where you're going to be Thursday, and I need to know what are your hours for lunch, because it might be that I take a late lunch and I need to know, are you still going to be at that location when I finally get there around 3 o'clock? These are all details that need to be available here on this very important location page. Now, if this is something that's being mocked up, the functionality is being mocked up on the go locator, then a little extra contextual information here, just in terms of description, like, hey guys, check out this interactive map that shows our real-time location. That's all you would need to do in order to mock up that functionality and give me the information to understand what you're trying to mock up with the page. So reviews and contact us, so a simple contact us form. I'm kind of looking elsewhere. I don't see any other way that we can get in touch. We could connect on social media, but other than that, we have this simple form. I like that, you've kind of, what I thought I was going to see here, reviews and contact us, were testimonials. And so in that way, it was a little less intuitive when I got here. And it says business reviews. And so what, I wonder then is that, are you using this form to elicit customer testimonials? Because if you are, I would be more clear in your instruction about that, right? So, and it doesn't have to be a ton of extra content, but maybe it's something just as simple as, let us know what you thought about, your meal, or let us know what you thought about the experience. Send us a note, so that we can continue to make sure that this is the best darn taco in San Diego. Something as simple as that would help there. This site is really clean, highly functional, and a few changes, in the hopper would really help push this towards an even stronger place, to be an example of strategic web design in a portfolio. So here we have another Squarespace site. And so a couple of things strike me about this. First is that I appreciate, the large application of the logo in the background, but it's not represented well because I can't actually see the business name. And it also complicates me reading the text on top of it. And so for that reason, it doesn't work in the background there. I like the inclusion of the blue, in the color scheme, since that's really on brand. But there's a lot kind of going on visually. It's layered in such a way that makes it hard to read, and in some cases kind of unusable in that aspect. So here we've got Real Deal Tacos at the top. It's in a text-based form, which is awesome. But then we've got it in the background here. My recommendation is, if you can put the logo up here in this header, do so in a way that it's clearly read. Otherwise, use this area like we talked about on a few of the previous reviews, where you have a text version of the business name and then highlighting that logo in a bigger capacity in the image banner underneath. We've got the best fish tacos in San Diego for real. Now, one of the things I want to highlight is, even with just me highlighting this text, which gives it a little bit of a different background color, you can see how just that alone has made this easier to read, right? And so, if you are layering these items, you always want to make sure that whatever you put on the top, which is what you intend to be most visible and most important, is clearly seen, right? So when you are layering objects or layering textures or text on an image, what you put on the top is what you're saying is the most important piece. Make sure that it is easily seen or read. This, in this case, is not so much. So I'm going to poke through these pages here. I'm scrolling down, and what I can see here also is that this is one of the images that was provided to you guys, but it gets cut off here. So, and in many ways, this just isn't a workable space for this piece of content. Scrolling down, we've got like some awesome large-scale banner images. As I click through, I can move through it manually. But again, what is missing here is that metadata, title, description. Let me know what I'm looking at. Because maybe that's what I want to order. And again, when you're choosing stock photography to accompany maybe the assets that your client has provided you, making sure that whatever you pick is representing the actual aesthetic of the business. Again, this is on a plate, which is not what we would see, with a food truck. Here we've got, so this looks like it's actually a one-page design, right? So I'm on home. I go to order menu. So here everything is kind of, we see the repetition of this. I'm thinking maybe instead of that, the title of menu would be more appropriate here. Not sure why order menu. I'm not sure about that combination of words. I think menu would be more appropriate here because it's not, we don't have the functionality built in here to the site where I could just order right from this particular page. I like that you've applied the headings and subheadings in this way. The addition of imagery would be nice here. The prices, it's a bit jumbled, right? So like even though it is organized in these columns across the way, maybe spacing them out a little bit more, just by proximity, meaning how close they are to one another. It looks as if these prices go with these items here. So a bit more can be done in this area to make that clearer. So scrolling down, I can see as I'm scrolling, that we're going from page to page here, which is cool. We've got, this wave image here. It just kind of, like it looks like it's floating. It doesn't seem purposeful. It looks like an image that was added, but not for any particular reason. Here we have another instance of the logo that's been cut off. Not quite sure what's going on with that. But it seems like we're now in the Contact Us area. And so here we have just the places that we can connect. These aren't actually linked, right? So like in terms of my user experience, if I see there's a couple of things that is complicated about this in terms of user experience. One is if this is a link, I am used to just clicking on this to take me somewhere. So right now that functionality is not existent, so disconnect. Two, if I actually want to go to this, I'm having to take the additional step of copying and pasting this information, right? So more work for me as a user, where you could simplify this by linking it. And then last but not least is that as we learned in the 10 Commandments, posting a URL is not, in its straight up gobbledygook form is not a best practice because it doesn't have a meaningful title. Like I can look at this and know that it's probably the Facebook Real Deal Tacos link address. But wouldn't this be easier if it was just the Facebook icon or something that said visit us on Facebook? Both of those things are more intuitive than just the URLs that we're seeing here. Scrolling down, we have schedule, right? But it's blank, right? Like I don't see anything actually here on the schedule. Is it the schedule? What is it the schedule for? I'm assuming that it's the schedule for stops, but there's nothing that even set, or schedule of locations, but there's nothing that even makes that clear for me, or I don't see any of that here on the calendar itself. Or maybe this is a schedule of special events. It could be a number of things. So that definitely needs to be clarified because actually the location information for this truck is, I would argue, one of the two most important bits of information for prospective visitors to the site. Scrolling down, we have the About Us. Right now, looking at this, I know that it is a picture, right? Which means that this is a picture of words, which means it is a collection of pixels that form the shape of letters, that form the shape of words, that form sentences that Google can't read. So all of this keyword-rich content that's in here is basically gone to waste. The other thing is that because this is an image, it has some compression on it, which makes it harder for me to read because the text is a little bit more blurry than it would be if it was actual text on an HTML page. There are a number of reasons why this is problematic, but those are just two. The other part of this is that this super dense paragraph text. No care has been taken here to break this up in terms of making it more palatable for an online reading audience. Remember how users are scanning information in an F-shaped pattern. This would be very hard for them to scan to get any of the salient points out of that information. So this definitely needs to be streamlined in the revision process. And you don't have to include all of this information. If you do want to include it, how do you break it up in such a way that lets people kind of scan and jump from spot to spot? Bring in imagery, do a pull quote, use headings, use subheadings, use bulleted lists. There are a number of different ways, but part of your job on this project as the web strategist was just not to take information from one place as it is and put it in another place exactly how it is. You've been learning for 2 weeks now, you guys, about how to apply these concepts and techniques to laying out and editing information for the web. Hence the name of the course, right? So scrolling down, we see the gallery of food, which is awesome. So some really great images here. One of the things I need to say, though, about using these stock images is, aside from making sure that they're relevant in terms of aligning to the brand and representing the aesthetic of the brand in the way that you need to, is do you have permission to use them, right? And that's kind of a very important point if you intend to use this Real Deal Tacos site in your portfolio, right? So, I'd hate for you to spend all of your time and your talent creating something that you can't really showcase as your own. Because you've used images that you don't have permission to use. So there are so many free and available resources online for you to find stock images. If these are not, if these are not images that you have permission to use, I definitely encourage you guys to swap them out at the revision process if you want to use this site as a portfolio piece. If you don't, that's fine, right? For the purposes of this assignment, I'm not going to be a stickler on that. I want you to understand why, though. I want you to understand why you're not going to want to use images that you don't own when you're creating something for your own portfolio piece. Like that's fraud on a number of different levels, right? So again, make sure that you're using images that you have the rights to. One of the things that I would like to see if you are kind of doing this, this one has a watermark here. So, again, permission, permission, permission. If you are including images, I need to see titles and descriptions of what I'm looking at, right? Because again, this looks amazing and I definitely want to order this particular dish, but I have no idea what to call it when I get to that food truck window, right? And so that is giving me the context to understand the content that I am seeing on the page, which is 10 commandment number 10, right? So again, you guys, I am highlighting these things because these are high-level concepts and techniques that I need for you to be able to extrapolate from one project to the next. All right. Kind of scrolling down, I see this, there's one more link here, which is a README link. So I'm kind of scrolling to see what that is. It seems like, hold on. All right, it looks like it's a link that the content has been taken off or unlinked. I know that when you are using Squarespace, that they provide you basically kind of like an informational page that lets you know about the template that you've chosen. And so they call it the README page. So you want to move this out of your navigational structure where it says main navigation, drag and drop this into an area that says not linked, or delete the page altogether. This site has a lot of really wonderful beginning points, but there's a few things that definitely need attention in the revision process. So here we have another Real Deal Tacos site. I almost didn't see it because it's so incredibly tiny, but here's the logo, right? And so the brand itself is hard to see. And we get this awesome image of the food, but I can't actually see the logo there. So this is kind of a scrolling slideshow of pictures. Here I see, I'm going to go back really quickly. Here I see the logo on repeat, and I like that you have included it in the larger aspect here, but the repetitiveness of it is a bit too much in this regard. I would have stuck with just one, because you can see here how California and San Diego basically run together and create a look that isn't as clean. The other thing, kind of my initial impression here, is that the information is very consolidated. It's very crammed up, meaning that there's not enough breathing room between the elements. The header images, like, they butt up right directly underneath the navigation, and then the content starts right under that. Again, the good thing about website design is that you have the ability to space these out without having to worry about the cost of printing something onto 2 pages versus 3. So I want you guys to, again, that is one of the 10 commandments of the course, is to think about that breathing room, that padding, and giving each element its own space on the page. So I'm going to pause this here, and I want to highlight, here's a testimonial. Now, I really appreciate this because you've taken that content and you've done something interesting with it visually here. Right? This is a great way to present a testimonial on the page, because you've not just made it kind of a positive review, you've also given it something interesting for us to look at. So that's a great and creative approach to doing that. So I'm going to poke around from page to page. Here we have home, about us, services, menu, contact locations, and FAQ, and then that drops to history. So there's a lot of pages here for us to explore. I'm kind of scrolling down here on the home page. We have a little bit of a welcome message. We have kind of like an advertisement for like the best fish tacos in San Diego, that tagline. And then here, it looks like the promotion of an event, but it's really just a bunch of dense text, right? There's nothing, there's no real even title to this event that is drawing my eyes or attention to it in a way that immediately lets me know what you're talking about. So thinking about information hierarchy, you want to like highlight that title of the event pretty prominently so that I will be intrigued enough to want to read more, right? Again, care needs to be taken with this content to streamline it and to lay it out in such a way that helps facilitate my scanning behavior, right? I'm a busy user. I'm here for one of 3 things, right? To get my questions answered, to complete a task, or what? Satisfy a goal of some kind, right? And you, as a designer and as a strategist on how to lay out this content, can help me in my mission, because you know my behaviors. You know that I'm not reading every single word on the page, right? So how can you lay this out in such a way to facilitate me in my mission? So we've got a calendar, of events here, and we can see that like nothing's really going on. So this is like a widget, right? It's something that's been put in here, to kind of show the dates, which is great. You're kind of mocking up how this would look, but in this way, because there's not anything really going on right now, and you've placed this kind of as a central focus point, you kind of push the business information over here to this side, and the kind of the highlighting of something that is on the counter over here. I'm thinking that potentially moving this widget off the page would give you more of that breathing room, to really focus on these other bits of content. You've got your social media down here, which is great, but they are in fact still linking out to Wix locations. We've talked about why that's a big disconnect for your client when they're looking at this, and for your customer when they're looking at this, because it's linking to Wix locations. When you are leveraging these free tools and they have placeholder content on the site, you really need to make sure that all of that content is linked and been customized for your particular project. It's dotting your I's and crossing your T's. It's paying attention to details in such a way that will show your professionalism as somebody who builds websites. So I'm going to jump next to the About Us page. So here we have, looking, so I thought perhaps, I'm not understanding the content of this page that much, because it looks like another widget of some kind, but it looks like maybe they're blog posts. I'm not sure. So I'm going to click on one of these and see where it takes me. So definitely a disconnect. because I was expecting kind of about us or the backstory here, but I've gone to something that looks like a widget of certain kinds of blog posts. So it says about the real deal. Welcome to our first blog. So it looks like it's maybe like a summary block or a summary page of blog posts. But when I actually go to click on it and I'm reading this, it says welcome to our first blog post. Here you will get to know, or here you will get to the real us as we travel from place to place. We will give you the whole experience every step of the way. Welcome to the really real deal. But then over the years it talks, or then down here it talks about over the years I learned how to create websites from scratch. And so this part is the disconnect. Is this placeholder content? Is that what's going on? You know, I don't know if that's purposeful. But definitely a disconnect because the content itself doesn't match the overall site. So here, hosting made easy, I don't know what that does. So tell visitors about this category. Yeah, okay. So like as I'm continuing to poke through these options here, a lot of I'm stumbling over it. You can actually hear me not understanding how to navigate this space or how to make sense of it, right? And because of that, you can ascertain that this isn't an intuitive design, right? Because I can't very easily navigate it, and I can't very easily understand what I'm looking at or make intuitive choices about what happens when I click where, right? So if this is just simply the about page, then how about just a little bit of the backstory, an image, a pull quote, you know, something that makes it easy for me just to know that little bit of an introduction and history of the business itself. Jumping over to services. So here it looks like we have you know, just a little bit of information about the truck, right? So it's almost like that brief introduction that would be appropriate for the home page or even the about page. Services on this particular, as a title for this particular page, isn't that intuitive. You know, services is that this truck provides food at different locations, but I'm not sure that that it warrants its own page, right? Because they really only have one service, which is to provide awesome fish tacos to the people of San Diego. So for me, right now, the content that was on the home, the about us, and the services page really could all be consolidated onto the home page alone. There's no sense in trying to build out a site with multiple pages that only have droplets of content, right? You know that users are only like scanning this information, and to make them click more places for the information is not a positive user experience. So jumping next over to menu. So here we see, you know, this is organized in such a way that is included imagery. We've got the, you know, the headings and the subheadings. You know, the alignment of this is a little tricky because you're going back and forth, back and forth. This part here is wrapping in a strange sort of way. You've got all of your text aligning to the left, so it would make sense that this heading would also align to the left over here. You know, I see kind of the inclusion of different visual styles, right, in terms of the typography. You know, because as we're jumping from page to page, just seeing kind of different styles, right, and different headers or different headings. You want to be consistent, right? So all of your headings should look the same, and all of your body text should look the same, be the same typeface, the same weight, the same size, right? Because the way your paragraph text looks on one page should be the same on the next. The way your headings look on one page should be the same on the next, because you're trying to promote a consistent experience. You don't want to feel like you're on a different site from page to page. Under contact, I'm jumping here. We have a simple form. It says we'd love to hear from you. But what would you love to hear about? You know, make it clear that, like, are you soliciting, like, do you want people to give you reviews of your food? Do you do you want people to give you suggestions? These are all types of things that you could, you know, just offer more context for why people would contact you. Jumping next to location. So here we have, basically I can see that we've got kind of like a, we've got an interactive map, but it's still, again, linking to Wix locations here, right? Which is not, it's not in San Diego altogether. So disconnect between where, you know, where the map is showing and then where this text says that they're supposed to be, right? And again, all this information is super crammed in this area. Like there's no spacing, no breathing room between these elements. Spread it out, give it some breathing room. Now, you know, there are some schools of thought that might say, you know, you could put contact information down in the footer, like if it's just a phone number or an email address, maybe the contact form goes down in the footer of the site so that it's available on every page of the website. You know, but like that these locations are very, very important bits of information for this target audience. So making sure that there's not any sort of misunderstanding about where the truck is going to be super important for this client. FAQs going here, what's the history behind the company? So FAQ stands for frequently asked questions, right? But I don't see any questions here or answers. So is this placeholder? Is this kind of to be continued? But then kind of to complicate this further, it's Real Del Taco history. And then there's kind of a history tab underneath here. Now, anytime that you have like a drop-down menu. I want you to think about it like a folder structure whereby the link at the top is the name of the folder, and then the pages beneath it are like the pages that you would fit into that folder. Think about it in terms of the organizational structure, right? If I had a folder that was called recipes, like this thing, paper folders, like I have a file cabinet, and I have a folder called recipes. What do you think would be in that folder? Recipes of different kinds, right? Like, so maybe it's your grandmother's chocolate cake or your auntie's meatballs or whatever the case may be. There's a kind of an intuitiveness by what you have labeled that folder of what's going to be inside, right? So it's sort of like parent page, child page. So here, FAQs is not an intuitive title for that folder for me to find history as one of its pages, right? FAQs, I'm thinking if this is the title of the folder, what am I going to find in here? Questions, right? Not history. So again, we need to be thinking about the intuitiveness of our navigational structures. I'm going to jump here to the history page. And so what I see here, this is the about story, you guys. Like this is about us information. Here it's called history, which is fine, but it's all basically the same thing. And it is a bunch of dense paragraph text. Care needs to be taken with this content to break it up. Headings, subheadings, bulleted lists, pictures, pull quotes, even horizontal lines, even streamlining the text if that's what you choose to do. But as is, it's, you know, it's not really that scannable. And so what I'm seeing here is the opportunity moving forward with this project is the information that's under FAQs, history, home, about us, and services could all be consolidated onto a single page. The information that is found on contact and location could be consolidated onto a single page, so that what we're looking at, in fact, is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 page website, but rather a 3-page one: home, menu, and locations, right? So again, opportunities, opportunities, opportunities for your project revision. The reason why I go into so much detail with this feedback is because I want to help you guys create portfolio pieces out of your work here. You know, I'm hoping that by the end of our time together, you can point to a site that offers best practices for strategic layout and design, right? And so the expectation, you guys, is that you take this feedback and you apply it to your next iteration of this project, which is going to be due in week 4. So last but not least, guess what? Real Del Taco's website. We're lucky because there's relatively few students in both of these sections. Sometimes I'm like reviewing 20 sites, and to look at 20 Real Del Taco sites back to back can be a bit much. But so here we only have 6 awesome sites, and I just think it's so cool, you guys. I think it's so cool to see how all of you approach this with the exact same content, with the exact same instruction and lead in, but come out with like a different outcome, because you're each designers and you're each strategizing a new way or a different way to solve this problem, right? And so it's cool to see your designs come to life in such vividly different ways, because each one of them has some really cool things, and each one of them has some things that need to be worked on for the next version of it. The reason why I spend so much time showing you everybody else's work too is to inspire you as you continue to work on yours. Maybe you didn't think of this, or maybe you want to try something new with the revision. You definitely have that opportunity and the support to do so. So here I see the logo right up front. It's nice and big and can be easily read, so it looks great up there at the top. I do feel like there might be a little bit of distortion with it. It kind of looks like it's like maybe like squished a little bit. I'm not sure. Just revisit that to make sure there's no distortion in the proportions of that logo there. We've got our social media information. As I'm hovering over the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram icons, I can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen there's a preview of the URL down there, and I can see that they are in fact linking out to Real Deal Taco locations online. When I click on this one here, it takes me to the page, and what I was highlighting is that it is opening in a new browser window, which is exactly what you want to have happen. You don't want to take people totally away from the Real Deal Taco site, but just open that social media presence in another window. So kind of coming back this way, we've got home, about, menu, services, FAQ, news, testimonials, location, map, contact. So there's a lot of pages here. I'm interested to see how this designer has laid out this content. We've got kind of a scrolling image here. As I'm hovering over it, I can kind of see that there is a title here. It says Fish Taco Hot Sauce, which is awesome, but it's like it's kind of hard to see. Like, I'm not sure what's going on here in terms of the contrast, but it looks better on the screen that we're projecting it on than it does in the window on my MacBook itself. So I'm just going to click on this here just to see if it pops up in a lightbox effect. It doesn't seem to do that, right? And so what I want to highlight about that is that this is kind of like a square frame that we're viewing this information, but that doesn't showcase this ad in a way that makes it readable for us, right? It's cutting off the words and the information. So because I can't view it in a full form, like, it makes it so that, like, it's kind of an unusable piece of content. It's like, why are you sharing that if we can't get the details that we need, right? So the opportunity then would be to have this open up in a light box, which means that, like, it opens bigger and I get to see the full thing, or to crop or redesign that ad in such a way that it's visible within the frame that you've created here for it. Now, looking at kind of the spacing or the layout of these elements, one thing that I want to notice, just want to point out that I noticed, is that I'm going to use these little crosshairs. Look how much spacing we have between the side of this container and the slideshow, right? And then look at what we see here, right? So we can see a bit of inconsistency. There's almost half as much space, right? These are small little considerations, but what you've done is you've basically crammed everything over here on the right-hand side in a way that kind of makes this look unbalanced, right? It kind of tips kind of the visual presence of the site to this, to the right side over here a little bit. So, just something to think about is making sure that you have that consistency, not just in terms of your styles, but in the spacing of your elements. Now, this is something that I see students struggle a lot with in Wix, right? This is something that Squarespace or Weebly doesn't quite allow you to do, because you can't move the elements around at will the way you can in Wix. That's why a lot of people love Wix, is because you have more control over the placement of those things. But in doing so, it requires you to be observant of so many more of the principles of design, because they are giving you the freedom to do that, right? So scrolling down here on the home page, we have the replication of the social media, which is cool. And then we have the fictitious business statement and some contact information, which is great there. We've got just kind of a quick introduction, and then ways that we can still link to these places up here. So one of the things I'll say is that this is a bit redundant, right? So we've got these exact same links showing up here. This is your high value real estate area, meaning that this is the only place that that users will see when they come to the site. I mean, they might poke around, they might scroll around to see more, but when I go to, let's say, realdealtacosandiego.com, this is the only snapshot that I get. So why use this area here for redundant information that I already have up here, right? There are so many pages up in this navigational structure. If you have more content, there might be a way to consolidate these pages and give you more bang for your buck here on the home page. So let's poke around. On the About page, so here we have just a little bit of the backstory about these this smiling couple, as it is. This, care has been taken to streamline this text, to cut it down. But a couple of things stick out to me. One is that there's no inset padding within this container, meaning that the content goes all the way out to the sides in a way that gives a very squished appearance. Right? So again, the breathing room, this content shouldn't go, anywhere outside of, the box that I'm drawing here, because you want to make sure that it has the padding within that container. The other thing is that the text is center aligned. And with any sort of paragraph text, you never want to center align it because it reduces the readability of it. As our eyes wrap from line to line, it's fatiguing on us if there's a different starting place for each line. Our eyes don't know quite where the next line is going to begin, so there's a searching thing that our eyes have to do to locate that next line, and kind of keeping within our minds the little bit, like the last fragment of the sentence that we read and what matches up contextually with the beginning of the next sentence, right? Like as this one ends here, while visiting what? His uncle. Okay, that makes sense. So our eyes are scanning that information away to connect those dots. It's easier when text is left aligned, when we're reading in English, to give that consistent starting point for our eyes to do that wrap. It makes it much easier to go from line to line. Jumping over to menu. So here we have another Find Us link. And it looks like this information has been broken up, headings, subheadings. This is organized very beautifully. Stylistically, this black is a little bit dark. We talked about that on one of the earlier reviews. This is like open, ocean, breezy, sunshine, San Diego. And the black is a little bit darker than the aesthetic, that supports the Real Deal Taco brand. So you might want to see this lightened up a bit here. Again, the addition of images to go with the food is a great selling point. It's a great marketing tool, right? So you might want to see the inclusion of that there. Services, going to jump then to that page. So catering and contact us. So there's really, if you're only saying that catering is the only service, do we need a full page for this? Maybe just on the contact page, there's a note that says, do you need us to cater an event? Send us your information. I don't know that it needs its own page. Under FAQs, FAQs is not an intuitive subpage of a folder that's called services, right? Because FAQs is not a service. And so for that reason, the organization of that content doesn't make intuitive sense. So here we've got our frequently asked questions. Are you going to open a restaurant? At this time, we're only using the truck. Are you going to add more menu items? We will upon special request. So I like to see that this content wasn't provided, but this designer wanted to mock up or to include this, which is great, and has taken the extra time and care to create and show this functionality. I just don't think that the the placement of this link in this navigational structure makes as much intuitive sense as it needs to here. Jumping over to news, so here we have what looks kind of like blog posts, but they're not actually blog posts, right? This is a straight up content page that is listing this in chronological order. And this is problematic for the reasons that we talked about very early on in the first review, the idea that these are time stamped or time dated in such a way that anytime that the owner wants to add more information to this page, they're going to have to go in and manually change the layout of all of it, shift all of the elements down, decide how much is too much for a page. When do I, remove one of these? Do I remove it after the event has passed? But then, I remove all that keyword-rich content. This is all content that would be best displayed with the timestamping capabilities of a blog. Right? So what we would be looking at here would be the body of a blog post. When I go to more news, where does that take me? It looks like it's taking me to some information about the event itself, right? So what I might say is more information might be a better, more information about this event might be a more intuitive title for that link. So what I see here is the big opportunity is to turn this into a blogging platform. Again, talking about the intuitiveness of links within a folder structure. If this is the folder, what information do you think would be in the folder? More news. Testimonials is not news information, right? So we talked also in the beginning of the review session about putting all of your reviews in a single place, and how making, how clumping them together in that way makes somebody less likely to read all of them, because they all know that it's all going to be positive. They've been cherry picked by that owner. And we saw back here, let's see here, on this particular site, how you can showcase those testimonials in a visually interesting way, right? So here we have the testimonial in kind of like this scrolling banner image. There's like dynamic movement. There's only, one particular testimonial here. You could even add like an image of the person who said it. There's any number of creative ways that you can do it to turn this text content into visual content, right? So definitely some opportunity here to think about how can I pull these elements out, make them more visual, and to pepper them throughout the site in a way that grabs more attention, rather than displaying them all here to all say the exact same message, which is you should eat Real Deal tacos. Going next to location. So here we see that broken down by date, which is great. On a couple of pages we've seen an additional link here, which is a bit redundant because that link is right in this location. And on the menu, we've got Find Us here, which is the same as location here. It's just kind of adding some busyness into the design when these links are already here and they're labeled in fairly intuitive ways. So my recommendation would be to pull those. And we've got the hours of operation. My question is, why is the map separated from the locations, right? So it doesn't need to be broken up in that way, and then we wouldn't also have to have this drop down of information. The consolidation of this into a single page would be the way to go here. The other thing to note is kind of stylistically, you've kind of given us a container here that's kind of like an opaque gray, and we could see it here on the location page. It comes back in under full black, right? And so just inconsistency of the styling, right? Inconsistency of the width of these elements and the width of these pages. This site is structurally very strong, but inconsistent from page to page in terms of some of the stylistic elements. Last but not least, we're going to jump over to contact. So visit our truck is again just a link to the locations pages again. So redundancy in terms of the navigation there. Social media sites, you've already shared them in both the header and the footer, which means they're available in every page. And also you kind of called them out, but you've used icons that are universally recognizable for these things. So I don't think that you necessarily need to shout it out in that way. And then we've got just a simple contact form. The only thing I see missing from this area would be, why should people contact you? Why do you want people to connect? Is it to give reviews? Is it to give suggestions? Again, give people a bit more direction, give them a bit more context as to what you might want them to contact you about. Overall, this is a very strong site, and with a few tweaks, you have something that's a really nice showcase of your work for Real Deal Tacos here. Overall, you guys, I'm very, very pleased with what it is that you guys were able to create coming out of the, just your first time up at the plate for Real Deal Tacos, and maybe your first site that you've created. Obviously, the expectation is to take the feedback here and to apply it not just in your vision of your Real Deal Tacos site, but also to your portfolio sites moving forward. If you guys have any questions about what was shared here, obviously get in touch. Happy to clarify any of these points or help troubleshoot any sort of design issue that you're having. I'm going to jump back over to that slideshow that we were looking at just to kind of wrap up this review session. All right, so here we are, heads up. This is what we've got for the remainder of the week. It's probably going to feel a little bit lighter in terms of workload just because you don't have something due every day like you did last week. So I hope it feels like a breath of fresh air. We have hit a transition point in the course. As we wrap up our work with Real Deal Tacos here in the first 2 weeks, we're transitioning more now in week 3 to working on those portfolios. The first assignment that you have due, which I don't know why I don't have it listed here, is your Diigo exploration, which is due on Tuesday night. Your Diigo exploration is where you take a look at a curated set of articles that are related to the web in different ways. I'm going to just escape here and I'm going to go back into my slideshow and update that right now because that just seems like an oversight. All right, Diigo Exploration. Want to make sure everybody has all the information that they need to get this job done. All right, Diigo Exploration. You're going to choose 3 articles from a curated list of resources that have to do with different web-related topics, right? You have the freedom and autonomy to choose whatever interests you most from the list here. Now, do not just pick the first 3 articles because they might not be the most interesting articles to you. Spend a little bit of time just scanning the titles to find stuff that you think will be helpful for whatever your interests are in furthering your skill set and knowledge in this web-related discipline. Right? We have a lot of articles in there that talk about building an awesome portfolio site. Since that is the focus of your project this week, maybe that's the kind of article that you want to read. Maybe you're really more into this idea of user experience. Check that article out. They are tagged by topic, so if there's something that's aesthetic related that you want to check out, if there's something user experience or something portfolio related, dig a little bit deeper there and don't just go with the top 3. Go with the 3 that are most interesting to you to get the most out of the assignment. What I ask is that you read them and then basically pull out 3 points of interest and how you will kind of apply those points to the work that you're doing in this class and beyond. Your portfolio inspiration activity, it's an analysis that happens later in the week. It's due Thursday night. This is where I ask you to take a look at 3 portfolio websites of professionals who you wish to emulate in the media communications industry, right? Maybe you have a lot of different interests. Then take a look at a photographer, a videographer, and a graphic designer. Just to see how different people are showcasing their work and their talents. From there, I ask you to do a video review similar to what you did with that competitor research assignment. The idea is to inspire some of the choices that you're making with your portfolio website. And then Sunday, you have your portfolio skeleton due. I say skeleton because at this point in your progression through the MCBS program, you may or may not have all the content that you want for your portfolio website, but theoretically, your portfolio will never actually be done. You will always be doing more and better work as you continue along, not just in the program, but in your careers, and your portfolio should be basically a revolving door of your best work. So, and not just your best work, but showcasing the types of work that you want to do for other people. So, the expectation with this assignment, you guys, is that you get a nice structure in place, that the pages are populated with content, or at least as much content as you have for that right now, to give you a nice baseline to work from in Portfolio 3, where your focus will be then to enhance that site, both with elements of your personal brand and with additional content that you'll have time to create. So that is the look of week 3 right now. If you guys have any questions about any particular assignment, obviously let me know. I'm happy to clear up anything or to offer additional guidance as needed. Does anybody have any questions? Maybe later. Okay, so for right now, there are no questions. And with that, I want to thank you guys for your attention to this very super duper important archive. I find this to be one of the more difficult days in terms of content delivery on my side of things, because I just have to talk for so long about the Real Del Taco site. But I also feel like it's one of the most important learning days in the class, where we are specifically addressing the work that you have been focused on and creating, and giving you detailed feedback about those particular sites, the elements on them, and how you can evolve them to their next best place for that project revision. All right. Thanks, guys.